Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean, waves crashing, winds howling, uncertainty stretching as far as the eye can see. That's how life often feels. Unpredictable, challenging, and full of unknowns. But it's in these moments of uncertainty that the seeds of success are sown. Most people go through life wanting reality to be something it's not. They resist it. They complain about it. They hope it will bend to their preference. But the truth is, reality doesn't care what we want. It just is. The sooner we can accept that, the more effective we can become. One of the most important things I've learned in my life and career is this simple principle: embrace reality and deal with it. It sounds obvious. Of course we live in reality, but look closely and you'll see how often we don't. People lie to themselves. They hold on to beliefs that feel good rather than those that are true. They avoid difficult conversations, deny uncomfortable truths, and ignore painful feedback. Why? Because it's easier. It's more pleasant to live in illusion. But that illusion always comes at a cost. And over time, that cost compounds. I've made plenty of mistakes in my life, and I mean big, humbling mistakes. But each time I had a choice. I could either deny what happened and pretend everything was fine, or I could look directly at the reality in front of me and ask why it happened and what I needed to learn from it. That's not always easy. In fact, it's often painful, but it's necessary. When you embrace reality, you stop being a victim of it. You start to understand how things actually work. You see the patterns, you see what causes what. And when you do that, you start to become a better decision maker. You become more objective, more grounded. You're not thrown off course by surprises because you've trained yourself to expect and understand how the world works. The most effective people I know are not the smartest or the most charismatic. They're the ones who are ruthlessly honest with themselves. They're constantly observing, learning, and adapting. They don't let their egos get in the way of progress. They understand that reality is the ultimate arbiter. If something isn't working, they don't take it personally. They try something else. They iterate. They evolve. When I founded my company, I didn't set out to build something perfect. I knew I would make mistakes. In fact, I planned on it. The key was to create a system where mistakes could be seen clearly and turned into learning. We built a culture around radical transparency. Everyone could see everything, the good, the bad, the uncomfortable. And because of that, we made better decisions. We moved faster. We improved constantly. It wasn't always comfortable, but it was real. Embracing reality also means accepting the things you can't control. There are forces much bigger than any of us: the economy, politics, technology, nature. These things don't care about our opinions. They just are. Fighting them is a waste of energy. What matters is how you respond to them. Do you adjust? Do you prepare? Do you build in flexibility? That's what dealing with reality looks like. Sometimes people think accepting reality means giving up, but it's the opposite. It means engaging with the world as it is so you can shape it more effectively. You can't fix a problem you won't admit exists. You can't improve if you won't acknowledge where you're falling short. The path to success always starts with the truth, no matter how uncomfortable that truth may be. I remember a point in my life when I was absolutely convinced I was right. I had built up a narrative in my mind that made sense to me, but I was wrong. The market proved me wrong. The data proved me wrong. And when that happened, I had a choice. I could cling to my belief out of pride, or I could accept the truth and grow from it. That moment changed everything for me. It taught me that the greatest threat to progress is not ignorance. It's the illusion of knowledge. Thinking you know something when you don't. That's what blinds you. To truly embrace reality, you have to develop what I call radical open-mindedness. You have to be willing to question your own assumptions. You have to seek out disagreement. You have to listen to others with the goal of discovering where you might be wrong. It takes humility, it takes courage, but it pays off. Over time, as you build this mindset, you'll find that reality becomes your partner, even when it's painful, especially when it's painful, because that pain is a signal. It's telling you something's not working, something needs to change. If you listen to it, if you analyze it, you'll grow, you'll evolve, you'll become stronger. The world is a complex, messy, ever-changing place. You can't control everything, but you can control how you respond. You can choose to look reality in the eye, to learn from it, to work with it, to deal with it. That's the foundation of all meaningful success, not wishful thinking, not blind optimism, but clear-eyed, principled action, grounded in how things really are. That's what I built my life on, and I can tell you from experience, it works. Pain is an inevitable part of life. You can't avoid it. You can try, but sooner or later it finds you. The question is not whether you will encounter pain. The question is how you will respond to it. What you do with that pain determines everything. It is one of the most powerful signals you will ever receive. It is life's way of grabbing your attention and saying, pay attention, something isn't working. For a long time, I resisted pain. Like most people, I saw it as something negative, something to be avoided, something that meant I had failed. But over time, I learned that pain wasn't the problem. My relationship with pain was. Pain itself is actually a gift. It's a teacher. And when combined with reflection, it becomes a force for transformation. That's where the equation comes in. Pain plus reflection equals progress. This principle didn't come to me in a moment of inspiration. It came through experience, real, sometimes brutal experience. Early in my career, I made a decision that nearly cost me everything. I was confident. I believed in my analysis. I was sure I was right, but I was wrong, completely wrong. The market moved against me, and I lost nearly everything I had built. It was one of the most painful moments of my life. I felt embarrassed, defeated, even humiliated. But something interesting happened. Once I allowed myself to sit with the pain, to truly feel it, I began to see it differently. It was pointing to something, a blind spot, an assumption I hadn't questioned, a process that needed improvement. I began asking myself hard questions. What did I miss? Why did I miss it? What can I learn from this? That period of honest reflection led to the biggest breakthroughs of my career. Without that failure and without the reflection that followed it, I wouldn't be who I am today. Most people try to skip the reflection part. They feel the pain and then they move on too quickly, or they avoid the pain entirely by rationalizing what happened. They blame others. They deny reality. They repeat the same mistakes over and over again. That's not progress. That's stagnation. True progress requires both ingredients, pain and the deep, uncomfortable reflection that follows it. Reflection means facing uncomfortable truths about yourself. It means looking at your weaknesses without flinching. It means asking what role you played in your setbacks. It's not about self-blame. It's about responsibility. It's about learning. You cannot grow if you cannot reflect. You cannot improve if you don't understand what needs to be improved. I've seen this principle work not just in my own life, but in the lives of the most successful people I know. They don't avoid pain. They lean into it. They mine it for insights. They use it as fuel, whether it's in business, relationships, health, or personal growth. The pattern is the same. Those who progress the most are those who have learned how to use pain as a guide and reflection as a tool. One of the best ways to apply this is to build habits around it. After every major decision or event, take time to reflect. What went well, what didn't, why, what patterns are emerging, what blind spots are being revealed. Write it down, talk it out with people you trust. Don't wait for pain to overwhelm you before you start reflecting. Make it a routine part of how you operate. Over time, you begin to value the pain. You don't fear it. You even welcome it because you know what it leads to. You see mistakes not as failures, but as opportunities for growth. You stop needing to be right all the time. You stop tying your identity to your outcomes. You become more humble, more adaptive, more effective. This doesn't mean you seek out pain for its own sake. That would be foolish. But when pain comes, and it will, you meet it with a mindset that says, this is here to teach me something. And you listen, you reflect, you grow. This mindset can change everything. It makes you resilient. It makes you wiser, helps you move through life with a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you. You begin to see challenges as stepping stones, not obstacles. You begin to use adversity as leverage. People often ask me how I built what I built. They want to know the strategy, the system, the secret. But the truth is, none of it would have been possible without this principle. Pain plus reflection equals progress. That's the foundation. That's what allowed me to evolve, to adapt, to get better. Not once, but over and over again. So the next time you feel pain, stop and pay attention. Don't rush past it. Don't push it away. Sit with it. Ask what it's trying to show you. Reflect deeply. And then use what you've learned to move forward a little wiser and a little stronger than before. Because if you commit to that process over and over again, there's no limit to how much you can grow. If you want to build something meaningful, whether it's a company, a relationship, or a life of purpose, you have to start with the truth. Not partial truth, not convenient truth, but full, unfiltered, often uncomfortable truth. Truth is the foundation of meaningful work and meaningful relations. Without it, everything rests on illusion. I learned this the hard way. Like many people, I used to sugarcoat things. I thought I was being polite or saving someone's feelings, but over time I realized I was doing more harm than good. I was creating a culture of avoidance, not improvement. I was allowing problems to fester instead of solving them. I wasn't being honest with myself or with others. That's when I committed to the idea of radical truth and transparency.
The word radical is important here. It means going all the way, not halfway, not sometimes. It means being radically open to seeing and saying what is true, even when it's inconvenient, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts, because that's when it matters most. Most people are not raised to operate this way. We're taught to be polite, to avoid conflict, to smooth things over. But in doing that, we sacrifice what's real. We stop learning, we hide our weaknesses, we protect our egos instead of improving. Radical truth flips that on its head. It says that truth is not only essential, it is liberating. It is the fastest path to learning. It is the shortest route to progress. In my experience, the biggest failures in organizations and relationships are not caused by poor strategy or bad luck. They're caused by people not being honest with each other. Issues are swept under the rug, feedback is avoided, mistakes are denied, people say what others want to hear instead of what they need to hear, and slowly, silently, dysfunction grows. The solution is transparency. Radical transparency, that means putting the truth on the table. It means making sure everyone has access to the same information. It means allowing people to challenge each other openly, regardless of hierarchy. It means being able to say, I don't know, or I was wrong without fear of judgment. It creates an environment where the best ideas win, not the most senior voices. When we built this into our culture, the impact was extraordinary. People started solving problems faster. Mistakes became opportunities to learn rather than things to hide. Weaknesses were addressed, not avoided. Trust deepened because people knew where they stood with each other. There was no guessing, no political games, just clarity. That's not to say it was always easy. Radical truth can be uncomfortable. People are not used to hearing blunt feedback. It can feel harsh at first. But over time, people adapt. They see the value. They realize that being challenged is not an attack, but a gift. It shows that someone cares enough to help you improve. And once people get over the initial discomfort, they start to thrive. This approach requires a certain kind of person, someone who is open-minded, someone who doesn't take things personally, someone who wants to grow more than they want to be right. It also requires clear principles. You can't just throw radical truth into an organization without structure. You need to define what it means, how it works, and how to apply it consistently. One of the keys is to separate the message from the emotion. You want people to be truthful, but also respectful. The goal is not to criticize for the sake of it. The goal is to get to the best possible decision or outcome. That requires maturity. It requires people who can take feedback without defensiveness and give it without arrogance. I've seen teams transform once they embrace this mindset. Problems that would normally take weeks of indirect conversations to surface get dealt with in minutes. Bad ideas get exposed before they cause damage. Good ideas rise faster. Everyone gets better because everyone is constantly learning. Radical transparency also creates accountability. When everything is out in the open, people can't hide. They have to own their actions and their decisions. That can be intimidating, but it also creates pride. People step up, they push themselves, they contribute more fully because they know their voice matters and their work is seen. Some people hear the words radical truth and transparency and think it sounds cold or harsh. But in practice, it is one of the most human things you can create. It honors people's intelligence. It treats them like adults. It says we trust you to handle the truth and to grow from it. That kind of environment is rare, but when it's built right, it's powerful. It is not about being perfect. It's about being honest. It's about making decisions based on what is, not what we wish were true. It's about seeing reality clearly so we can deal with it effectively. When people operate this way, they align around the mission. They challenge each other to be better. They build something lasting. Radical truth and transparency are not just ideas. They are tools. And if you learn how to use them, they will make you smarter, faster, and more effective. They will improve your relationships, your organization, and your life. They will help you reach levels of performance you didn't think were possible. All you have to do is be willing to tell the truth and to hear it. Consistently, courageously, completely. That's when real growth begins. That's when you start building on a foundation that cannot be shaken. One of the most important things I've done in my life is write down my principles. Not because I thought they were perfect or because I wanted others to follow them blindly. I wrote them down because I realized something crucial. If I didn't have clear principles guiding me, I would be at the mercy of emotions, impulses, and randomness. Writing them down gave me clarity. It gave me consistency. It gave me something to return to when the world got noisy. Most people live their lives based on vague instincts. They react in the moment, driven by whatever feels right or comfortable. But in a world as complex and fast-changing as ours, that is a dangerous way to operate. You need to have a system for making decisions. You need a clear set of beliefs that you've thought through, tested, refined, and committed to. That system is built on your principles. Principles are the fundamental truths you rely on to make sense of situations. They guide how you behave, how you solve problems, how you deal with others, and how you make choices when the path isn't obvious. Without them, you're guessing. With them, you're building on a foundation of experience and reflection. The idea of writing them down may seem unnecessary at first. You might think you already know what you believe. But try this exercise. Sit down and articulate your principles about work, relationships, decision-making, failure, success, and improvement. Make them specific, make them actionable, then test them in the real world. You'll quickly realize how many assumptions you've never truly examined. Writing them down forces you to think deeply. It forces you to clarify. It forces you to confront contradictions. You might believe in being honest, but also believe in avoiding conflict. What happens when those two principles clash? When you write them down, you start to see those tensions, and once you see them, you can resolve them. You can refine your principles so that they work together in a coherent system. This process is not just personal, it's organizational. When I was building my company, we made writing and sharing principles a central part of our culture. Everyone knew what we stood for. Everyone understood the rules of the game. That clarity saved us time, reduced politics, and improved performance. When decisions needed to be made, we didn't start from scratch. We referred back to the principles we had agreed upon. It also made us more honest with ourselves. If something wasn't working, we could ask whether we were violating one of our own principles. If we were, we corrected it. If we weren't, we asked whether the principle itself needed to evolve. Either way, we were learning. We were getting better. People often resist this level of structure. They think it limits their freedom. In reality, it creates more freedom. It frees you from having to rethink the same problems over and over. It frees you from emotional decision-making. It frees you to operate with confidence because you know your actions are based on something deeper than impulse. Of course, your principles will change over time. They should. As you grow, as you learn, as you encounter new situations, your principles should adapt, but that's another reason to write them down. You can track how they evolve. You can see what you used to believe, what you changed, and why. That gives you insight into your own development. The goal is not perfection. The goal is clarity. When you know your principles, you know who you are and how you operate. You can communicate more clearly. You can align with others more easily. You can avoid unnecessary confusion. You can handle tough situations with greater calm and confidence. This doesn't mean your principles should be abstract or idealistic. They should be grounded in reality. They should reflect how the world actually works, not how you wish it worked. If you believe people never lie, you're going to get hurt. If you believe feedback is always easy to give and receive, you're going to be disappointed. Your principles need to be tested against real experience. Otherwise, they're just fantasies. I'm not saying this is easy. It takes time. It takes brutal honesty. It takes a willingness to examine your own behavior, your own patterns, and your own mistakes. But it's worth it. Because once you have a set of principles that work for you, you can rely on them, you can teach them, you can improve them, and most importantly, you can live by them. That's the real reward. Living a principled life is not about being rigid. It's about being grounded. It's about knowing what matters to you and acting in alignment with it. It's about making decisions that reflect who you are at your best. So if you haven't written down your principles yet, start now. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't try to get them right on the first try. Just start. Write what you believe. Refine it as you go. Test it in real situations and commit to learning from every outcome. Because in the end, life will test your principles whether you write them down or not. The difference is, if you've written them, you'll be ready. One of the most underestimated tools for performance, decision making, and personal evolution is meditation. It's easy to overlook because it seems too simple. It doesn't promise immediate returns. It doesn't look like work. But if you care about clarity, if you care about making better decisions, if you care about managing yourself and your life in a world that keeps getting more complex, meditation is not optional. It's essential. For most of my early life, I didn't give it much thought. I believed in logic, analysis, and action. Meditation seemed soft. It didn't fit my model of productivity. But over time, I started noticing that even when I had all the information, all the analysis, and all the tools, my mind could still be the biggest obstacle. I could be anxious. I could be reactive. I could be clouded by emotions or biases I didn't even know were operating in the background. That's when I realized the power of clarity. And that's when I started meditating. Clarity is not just about intelligence. It's about presence. It's about seeing things as they are without distortion. It's about separating signal from noise. When your mind is cluttered, when you're caught in a loop of overthinking or stress, you can't access that clarity. You can't hear your intuition. You lose the ability to step back and see the big picture. Meditation helps restore that balance. It quiets the noise. Meditation is not about escaping reality. It's about tuning into it more deeply. It trains your awareness. It teaches you to observe your thoughts without getting caught in them. That simple shift has massive implications. Because most people are so identified with their thoughts, they don't even realize how reactive they are. They think they're in control, but they're actually being pulled by patterns they've never examined. By taking even 10 or 20 minutes a day to sit still, to watch your breath, to observe your mind, you start to see those patterns. You start to realize how often your thoughts are automatic, repetitive, even irrational. You start to create space between stimulus and response. That space is where clarity lives. That space is where better decisions happen. This isn't just philosophy. It's practical. When you're in a high-stakes environment, when pressure is mounting, when things are uncertain, the person with the clearest mind is usually the one who makes the best decision, not necessarily the smartest, not the loudest, the clearest. Meditation gives you access to that level of clarity more consistently. I've seen this play out not just in my own life, but in the lives of the most effective people I've worked with. They're not always the most brilliant or aggressive, but they're grounded, they're calm under pressure, they can absorb conflicting information without getting thrown off balance, they can listen without reacting. That's a superpower, and it doesn't come from more effort. It comes from more presence. You don't have to become a monk. You don't have to sit for hours a day. What matters is consistency. Making meditation a daily habit rewires the way your mind works. Over time, you find yourself less reactive, more intentional. You start to notice when your emotions are clouding your judgment. You catch yourself before saying something you'll regret. You think more clearly because your thoughts are not racing in every direction. There's also a deeper benefit. Meditation puts you in touch with yourself, not your identity, not your ego, but the deeper part of you that sees clearly, that knows what matters, that isn't distracted by every external input. In that space, you make decisions with more wisdom and less fear. You start to operate from alignment, not anxiety. I've made some of the most important decisions of my life after sitting in silence. Not because I was forcing an answer, but because I created the conditions for insight to emerge. Clarity often arises when the mind is still, when you're no longer trying to control the outcome, but simply observing what is. That's when you see things as they really are. In a world that prizes constant action and busyness. Sitting quietly can feel counterintuitive, but some of the greatest leverage comes not from doing more, but from seeing more. When you can see clearly, you can act more effectively, you waste less energy, you reduce errors, you move with more confidence because you're not being driven by internal chaos. That's the real value of meditation. It's not mystical, it's strategic. It sharpens your edge, it strengthens your awareness, it improves your judgment, and it connects you to a level of perception that most people never access because they're too distracted to notice it. So if you want to operate at your highest level, if you want to be grounded in truth, if you want to make better choices and lead a more intentional life, start meditating. Make it non-negotiable. Treat it like the mental training that it is. Because clarity is rare, and in a world filled with noise, the person who sees most clearly is the person who leads. In the end, the secret to my success isn't a secret at all. It's about embracing reality, learning from pain, fostering open dialogue, documenting lessons, and seeking inner clarity. These principles have guided me through the tumultuous seas of life, and I believe they can serve as a compass for anyone willing to embark on their own journey towards success.